Hey, welcome to the channel. Alex Swire-Clark here, emotional intelligence expert, author, and award-winning speaker. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. If you like the content that we're putting out on a weekly basis, feel free to hit the subscribe button below, ding, bell notifications, and all that kind of good stuff that's right up there right now. In today's video, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence in the interview process. And so if you've ever been in an interview, you know that there are some standard questions like these. Hey, thanks for coming to the interview today. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your 3 biggest strengths and how do you bring those to the workplace? So where do you see yourself, let's say 5 years from now? And some of you may have been in some horrific interviews asking some very bad questions like these. So how much money you make right now? I'm not sure we can afford you. Who'd you vote for in that last election anyway? You one of them Biden people or you a Make America Great Again? Man, you look kind of big. Are you pregnant? So the interview process has changed over the years. You know, the standard questions, tell me about yourself, and all those kind of things have still stayed in existence, but we're adding more and more emotional intelligence pieces to that equation. And so I'm going to give you, in today's video, 4 super emotional intelligence questions that are going to help you with that self-awareness piece, as well as this social awareness piece, so that you can either, if you're an interviewer, give you some great questions to be able to use to determine the emotional intelligence of your candidates. And if you're on the other side of the table and you're looking for a new job right now, these are some questions you can anticipate because more and more employers are using them these days. Take a look. Okay, so question number 1 is, tell me about someone with whom you work on a regular basis that you find difficult to get along with. What have you done to build a stronger relationship and what was the result? So if we go back and look at this question a little bit, tell me about someone with whom you work on a regular basis that you find difficult to get along with. Well, that all goes back to the conflict that we've talked about on the channel before. So typically your diagonals, when we're talking about the DISC method of human behavior, that methodology, D's and S's typically struggle to get along, at least at first, without this common methodology, and the I's and C's do. Those D's, outgoing and task-oriented, execution, it's all about the bottom line, and the S's are more of the people-oriented side, and they're on the reserve side of things. So they're going to be more about relationships and understanding of others and very fiercely loyal to their people. The I's are outgoing and people oriented, and so they're going to be all about the excitement, the fun, and being very flexible, whereas the C's are going to be very rigid, very strict about the rules that they follow, very process driven as opposed to people driven. So a lot of that conflict can come from there. And so it says, what have you done to build a stronger relationship? Well, without a self-awareness piece in there, we really don't have any tools to make that happen. We kind of shuffle through and maybe we're doing some emotional adaptation, maybe we're not, but we really don't have a skill set and a tool set to be able to draw from to be able to make those relationships better on a daily basis. And it says, what was the result? Well, you could have crashed and burned. You could have left a job because of that. That happens a lot of times. I've heard many times from different folks in the industry that say, people leave managers, not companies. People leave managers, not companies. And so because of that personality conflict, there's this headbutting going on all the time, then they just leave because it's just too much for them to deal with on a daily basis. So there's a question you might be asking or be asked in an interview process. Question number 2, tell me about a time when you rejected one of your team members' ideas or opinions about a project. Okay, so tell me about a time when you rejected one of your team members' ideas or opinions about a project. So this really is more for those outgoing styles because, you know, outgoing styles typically don't hesitate when they have something to say, especially your high D's. If they have something on their mind, they just let it come out just right then. So tell me about, hey, I got something, you know, and they just interrupt. That's kind of what they do. And the I's, they share quite a bit. You know, they just love to talk and they get energy from being around others when they're allowed to share. For the S's and C's, they typically, especially in public situation, won't share their thoughts and feelings because they are that reserved type. So they're going to sit on the sidelines and kind of, oh yeah, okay. They're going to take notes, have their head down, doing their thing, and then maybe, you know, 30 minutes later, 2 hours later, a couple of days later, in an anonymous email, they'll share their thoughts in terms of what's going on or what they thought about a situation. But in terms of rejecting a team member's ideas or opinions about a project, I's and D's are more likely to do that publicly. S's and C's are more likely to do that privately and personally. So we can talk through that in a future video. Question number 3 says, describe a time when someone felt you were unfair what did you do? Unfairness. We get a lot of this in society, especially in the U.S. today, in terms of what's fair. Okay, equality versus fairness. There's that great debate that goes on all the time in terms of, well, it's not fair that this particular person is being, singled out, and it's maybe not for this person over here. They didn't have the same opportunities, and so that's not fair to them. So this question is really dicey because fairness and equality aren't always the same thing when we're trying to show those things. So describe a time when someone felt you were unfair, or maybe that you criticized a project, or they had a great idea that you didn't take on and take into the company, or they were trying to share something and you just said, well, now's not the time for that. And so what did you do? How did you respond? Well, for a high D, they're going to be very tactical, and they're going to be very, here's what we're doing. This is what it is. Personal feelings don't get into the conversation when you're talking to a high D. It's just about the bottom line. For an I, they're pretty touchy-feely. So for them, it's a situation where if they feel like they're being unfair, they're going to be like, oh, man, come on, man, what's going on? And so they'll immediately, after that meeting's over, talk to the person and say, hey, what was going on, man? Why didn't you, take my idea? What were you thinking? What was the thought process there? And so for the S's, if they feel like they're being treated unfair, and so they'll take that and they'll internalize it, and certainly not do anything publicly in those moments. They'll wait until afterwards, and maybe, possibly, kind of, sort of, they'll talk to a supervisor like that. But for the most part, they're just going to hold that inside. So if you want to hear how an S is doing, or if they felt unfair, you got to do that in a very private, personal, one-on-one kind of situation, because otherwise they're just going to hold that in, and you're never going to know that until they up and quit the company. So why'd you leave? You've never said anything to me. You never mentioned you weren't unhappy. You weren't unhappy or anything was going on. So the S's are going to internalize those things. And the C's are very, they're very, very calm. They're very calculated. They'll know the time and the place to say that. They'll wait, not do that in front of everyone, but then they'll approach that person and say, look, I felt like, I was done unjustly here, and here are my reasons why. Boom, 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 boom. In every other situation, we're told to report here and do this and X and Y and Z, and I followed those procedures, and yet I didn't get the outcome that we were looking for here. So from that perspective, the C's, are the ultimate rule followers. They're going to wait for the proper time and place, and they're going to cite what it was that was done to them that they thought was unfair in that circumstance. Okay? And then the last question is, how do you know we will be a culture fit for you? How do you know that we'll be a good culture fit for you? What traits do you have that match those of current employees? What is different about you, or what skill set do you have that could better our company and assist us in attaining our goals? Wow, that's a lot in one packed question. That's almost like 4 questions. Let me read that again for you. It says, how do you know we will be a good culture fit for you? What traits do you have that match those of current employees? What is different about you, or what skill set do you have that could better our company and assist us in attaining our goals? So from the fit standpoint, from a culture fit, for the high S's especially, culture is everything. It's everything for them. S's want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to feel like they're a part of a family. And for a D or a C, they're more intrinsically motivated. They can kind of work independently outside of other people. They don't require a lot of human interaction on a daily basis. So from a culture fit standpoint, for a D and a C, they're really not concerned about that. Can they meet their goals and their own individual objectives? They're not as concerned about the company's mentality, the company's objectives. Yes, if they're getting their job done and it helps to achieve the goals of the company, that's great, that's fine, that's what they want to do. But they're not necessarily concerned about the global culture as opposed to, can I do what I need to do within this company to get my job done and to succeed, because they're all about that success side of things. Now, on the what traits do you have that match those of current employees, well, that requires a little bit of research, right? I mean, if you don't know what the current employees are currently doing, then how can you possibly say that you're matching that, or the traits that you have are going to help supplement those things? So from that standpoint, the C's are going to do a ton of research. That's what they do before they even remotely get to the interview process. They're going to see, what are they doing from a philanthropy standpoint? What are they doing in terms of employee satisfaction. They're going to be checking out all the stats and everything else like that. The D's are going to see, you know, are there any award winners that come out of that company? I want to be a part of that kind of culture. And so, you know, I bring those skill sets. The I's are going to be, is this a fun place to work? Is this somewhere I'm going to enjoy being on a daily basis? And again, the S's are going to look for more of a kind of a family atmosphere, being their self, and how does that relate to achieving good things within their own team? What do I do that contributes to the greater good, not my individual accolades? So that's how each style would approach that. And then from the mindset of what is different about you, what skill set do you have that could better our company? Well, this is one of those things, you know, tell me your 3 greatest strengths again. So from that standpoint, the D's and the I's are quick to share the things that they do well, because they're outgoing. They like to be positive. Their glasses always half full, even more half full. So they're going to be able to say, oh, you know, I do this and I do this and I do this. And on my last company, I won these 3 awards and that kind of thing. But the S's and C's, not really. They don't like tooting their own horn. They don't like to brag about themselves. They're reserved by nature anyway. So speaking about themselves is just icky. It's just like, I don't want to talk about myself. I won these 4 awards, but you know, it was more my team than it was me. And so very humble on the S side. And for the C's, they just don't like going down that road, because for them, it's more of, you know, my resume speaks for itself. If you want to see those things, I've put them out. I've made sure that it was well thought out already. I put that in written form so you could clearly and easily see that. So they don't need to spend time talking about that in a situation. So when we're interviewing people, we have to know that, you know, to anticipate these responses so that we can better say, okay, well, this person's maybe more of a high D, more of a high C, and so we can tailor the rest of our questions to suit that particular interview. However, if we're talking about the I's and the D's, we know we can look for those kind of traits, S's and C's, those other kind of traits. And so it all goes back to, what are we interviewing for? What positions are we looking for? And so if we haven't done job benchmarking or hiring assessment based upon what the role it is that we're looking for, we really don't know how to use this information well. I mean, yes, I can say, oh, yes, they're a C. Well, how does that fit into the role I'm hiring for? And, you know, if I go on and say, oh, well, this person's going to be great, they got a great sense of humor and all that kind of good stuff. Well, is that a skill they need to be able to effectively do their job? And is it going to feed them? Because as you've heard me say on this channel many, many times before, we want people to be gaining energy from a role, not losing energy. We want people to gain energy from their roles on a daily basis, because if they are, then their passions and how they're fueled will help them overcome the challenges and the obstacles and the naysayers that they have to deal with on a daily basis within that role. And because of that fit that they have, if you're doing job benchmarking, then they're going to be like, oh man, this job was made for me, man. I mean, I want to thank you. Let me shake your hand. This is the greatest thing ever. And so again, they're going to be fueled by that, and that's going to help them achieve, be super successful. They're going to be fulfilled by that role on a daily basis. They're going to want to come to work every day and do their best because they're being filled by that role. So those are some questions that if you haven't asked them before in an interview, if you are an interviewer, if you're in a leadership position, might be good for you to start using. And if you haven't been in an interview lately and you're thinking about moving into another position, these are some questions you might be able to expect when it comes to that social awareness piece. Now, in our next video, we're going to talk about some more of these questions in terms of that whole relationship awareness and that relational side of things, and how do I get along with others. So stay tuned for that. Again, please like and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have any comments, feedback that you have. Always looking to grow and give you the content that you want that's going to help improve your personal and professional relationships. See you next time.